We continue now at the top of Daf Chafam and Beis in Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 20b. Rabbi Yirmiyah says that Rabbi Yochanan says when it comes to a dargish, seirugo mitocho, the straps are on the inside, it's tied to the inside of the posts of the bed. And mita, when it comes to a regular bed, seirugo me'al gaba, the straps are tied around the outside of the posts of the bed. And Rashi explains, seirugo kshira, so that means the tying of the straps, mitocho, again by a dargish, it's from the inside, sheyesh nekavim bar chavosa v'tochvin b'hen rashi ritzuos hatzluyos ba'or, you have holes in the legs, and that's how you fasten the straps. You don't wrap them around the legs of the bed, but when it comes to a mita, you're putting the ropes, the straps around the legs of the bed, and then he weaves it. That's what's referred to as sirug. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question on this from a Mishnah, Meseches Kalim, Kliyates, when it comes to wooden vessels, Me'emasai Mekabel and Tumah, at what point in time are they Mekabel Tumah? When are they considered to be a finished Kli? Hamita v'harisa, the bed and the crib, Mishi Yeshufim Bor Hadog, is when you smooth out the legs of the bed with the skin of a fish. And the Gemara says, V'i mita misureges. Now, if it is true that a bed is misureges me'al gaba, meaning you take the straps and you wrap them around the legs of the bed, so lama li shifas or hadog, why do you need to smooth out the legs of the bed with the skin of a fish? There's no point. You're going to be covering it over with those straps. And so the Gemara instead says, Ella rather havaha mitocho, really both by a mita and a dargish, you're going to fasten those straps from the inside of the legs. Mita aule va'afuke bebizioni, when it comes to a mita, to a bed, there you're going in and out of holes that are drilled in the legs. And dargish, when it comes to a dargish, aule va'afuke be'avak, so there you're going in and out of loops which are fastened to the legs of the bed. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yaakov says that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Halacha Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha is like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, that when it comes to a dargish, you don't have to turn it over. Rather, you just undo the straps. Amar Rabbi Yaakov Barami. Rabbi Yaakov Barami says, Mita shenaklita yotzin, if you have a bed, and the poles of the bed, that's to put a canopy over the bed. Let's say they're very tall, so zokfa v'dayu, it's enough just to stand it up. And Rashi explains, shenaklita yotzin naklitin shnei eitzim aruchim. Naklitin are the two long poles of wood. Uma'amidin osan be'emsa dofnei hamita. You put them in the middle of the bed. Echad merashoseh v'echad meragloseh. One is at the head of the bed and one is at the foot of the bed. Umifutsolin hein b'roshoseh u'manichin konem mizel lazeh. You put a pole from one to the other. V'yolav porsin hakila, and then on top of that pole, that's how you spread out the canopy over the bed. And some people, they would attach it at the bottom. That's why it uses the language of yotzin. They come out from the bed. The point is, you can't turn the bed over because of these poles. So what do? You just stand the bed up either by the head of the bed or by the foot of the bed. You stand it up in that fashion, and that is sufficient. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Motzi lemilchemes harashus al pi bezin shal shivim v'yechad. The king is able to take the people out to a voluntary and optional war through or with the permission of the Bezin of 71, meaning to say with the permission of the Sanhedrin Gedola. Uporetz lasos lo derech, he's able to make breaches and fences in order to make a road for himself. V'yein memacha biyado, and no one can protest against him. Derech hamelech ein lo shir, the path for the king, there is no shir in terms of its width or length. V'chol ha'am bozezin v'nos, and lo, and all of the people, they take the spoils of war and they give it to him. V'hu notel chelik barosh, and he's the one that takes the first portion. And Rashi explains, Uporetz gideros acherim, he can break down other people's fences, lasos lo derech, in order to make a path, l'sadeu l'karmo, to his field or to his vineyard, and chelik barosh, he takes that first portion. What that means to say is chelik hayafe bora rishon v'notel mechza, he takes the better portion first, and he takes half. And the Gemara says, Tanina chadazimna, didn't we already learn this in the first Mishnah? The first Mishnah said, Ein motziin l'melchemes harashus, el alpi bezin shel shivim v'yechad, the king cannot take the people out to an optional war unless he has permission from the Bezin of 71. That's exactly what this Mishnah says. And the Gemara answers, Aidi de Tana kol mili de melech, Tana nami motziin l'melchemes harashus. Since in this Mishnah we're teaching all of the different halachas pertaining to a king, so we also bring down what we said in the first Mishnah, that he can take them out to the melchemes harashus with the permission of the Bezin shel shivim v'yechad. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Kol ha'amur beparshas melech, everything that's said in the parsha of the king in Sefer Shmuel, Rashi here says, Beparshas Melech B'Sefer Shmuel. In Sefer Shmuel it says, B'neichem uvnosechem yikach. They're being warned, the people are being warned that he'll take your sons and your daughters. V'chayotze b'hem, and similar types of statements like that in Sefer Shmuel. So says Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel, Kala Amor, Beparshas Melech, everything that is said in the Parshas Melech and Sefer Shmuel, Melech Mutter Bo, the king actually is allowed to do those things. Those are all, he has permission to do all of those things. And the Gemara continues, Rav Amar, but Rav says, Lo nemra parsha zu ela la'ayim aleim. It's not true. The whole parsha was really just to scare them. It was to scare the people. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Som tasim alecha melech, place a king for yourself. Shetei maso alecha, that his fear should be over you. And Rashi says, Rav Amar lo nemra parsha de Shmuel. The reason why the parsha was said in Sefer Shmuel, ela la'ayim aleim, it was to scare them. Shetei emas malkom aleim, that they should fear their king. Aval eino mutter lasos, but he's not actually allowed to do those things. And the Gemara says, Kitanai, this is actually a machlokas tanoim. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Kol amur beparshas melech, melech mutter bo, everything that is stated by the parshas melech and Sefer Shmuel, the king is allowed to do those things. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo nemra parsha zu ela kadei la'ayim aleim, that parsha is really said in order to scare them. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Som tasim alecha melech, shetehei emaso alecha, you place for yourself a king, that his fear should be over you. V'chein hayu Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and similarly Rabbi Yehuda says, Gimel mitzvahs nitztavu Yisrael, bechnisason la'aretz. Klal Yisrael was commanded 3 mitzvahs when they entered Eretz Yisrael. Lahamid lahem melech, they had to establish for themselves a king. Ulahachris zaro shel Amalek, and they had to destroy the seed, they had to destroy the descendants of Amalek. V'livnos lahem beis habechira, and they had to build for themselves the beis habechira, they had to build the beis hamikdash. Rabbi Nahoroi Omer, Rabbi Nahoroi says, Lo nemra parsha zu, ela keneged tarumasim. The whole reason this parsha was stated was because of their complaints. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, V'yamarta, and you will say, Asima alai melech v'gomer, you're going to say that I want to have a king. So in response to that, that's why the parshas HaMelech was stated. And Rashi explains, Hachi Garsinon, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo nemra parsha zu ela la'ayim aleim. Again, this entire parsha was just to scare them. He's not allowed to do these things. V'lo garas liyarim ulavalim, don't have the gears of liyarim ulavalim. The whole Rabbi Yehuda yafe kivnu sharei nitztavu Yisrael al kach. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, it wasn't to scare them away from having a king, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, on the contrary, there's a command that they should have a king, as we just said. Rabbi Yehuda says there are 3 mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael was given, but still you should have a certain fear from the king. V'hachi garas labatosefta, shalosh mitzvahs, again, Rabbi Yehuda says there were 3 mitzvahs that Klal Yisrael got when they entered Eretz Yisrael. Lahachi nakat shalosh halalu shein teluyos zu bazu. The reason why these 3, there were many mitzvahs, but these 3 are dependent one on the other. Lasos and kesidron, you have to do them in that order. Kidem afarish l'kamon, as will be explained further on. Betchila melech, first appoint a king, v'yachareh Amalek, then destroy Amalek, v'yachareh beis habechir, and then you build the beis hamikdash. And Rashi continues, b'chnisasam la'aretz, again these 3 mitzvahs were given when they entered Eretz Yisrael. T'v'kulok siv Yerusha, v'yeshiva, v'yorashti, v'shavtaba, v'yamarta sim alai melech. It always mentions the fact that they're inheriting and settling the land. That's by melech, by king it says that, by Amalek siv, v'yabiniach Hashem v'gomer, it says that by Amalek as well, uvavinyan beis havachir ksiv, v'avartem asayardim, v'shavtem ba'aretz, similar kind of language there as well, v'adr ksiv v'haya hamakom. And Rashi continues, Lo nemra parsha zu de som tasim alecha melech, this parsha of som tasim alecha melech, according to Reb Nehoroi, it was only stated, mishum mitzvah, it's only stated as a mitzvah, ele keneged tarumasam, only because it was known that they would complain and that they would want that. Shagoloi lefanav, it was known before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sha'asidim lehisuroyim al kach, that they would complain about this, v'lomar, and they would say that they want a king, v'hayinu gam anachnu kechol hagoyim, that we should be like all of the other nations. Shenemar v'yamarto asima asidin atem lomar kein, in the future you will say this. That's why this mitzvah was given. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Zikanim shebedor, the elders of the generation, kahogan shalu, they actually properly asked for a king. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Tanalanu melech l'shaftenu, give us a king in order to judge us. Aval amei haaretz shebehen kilkalu, however, the amei haaretz, the common people, they ruined it. Shenemar, as it says, V'hayinu gam anachnu kechol hagoyim v'shaftenu malkeinu v'yotze lefanenu, that we should be like all of the other nations. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi says, Shalosh mitzvahs Nitztavu Yisrael b'chnisas and la'aretz. Klal Yisrael was given 3 mitzvahs when they entered Eretz Yisrael. Lahamid lahem melech, to establish for themselves a king. Ulhachar zaro shel Amalek, to destroy the descendants of Amalek. V'livnos lohem beis havechir, and to build the beis hamikdash. Ve'eni yodeya eza mehan tchila, I don't know which one is first. Kishu omer, when the pasuk says ki yodal ke'eskam milchama Hashem Amalek, it talks about the war against Amalek. Have omer, so then we can understand lahamid lohem melech tchila, that first they actually have to have a king. V'ein kisei el melech, because kisei, what does that refer to? That refers to the king. Shenemar, as it says, vayeshev Shlomo al kisei Hashem lamelech, that Shlomo sat on the kisei Hashem to become the king. V'adayin eini yodeh, but still I don't know. Im livnos lehem beis havechira tchila, o lahachris zaro shel Amalek tchila, what comes first? Building the beis hamikdash or destroying Amalek? Kisho omer, when it says in the pasuk, v'niach lechem mikol oiveichem v'gomer v'hoya hamokum asher yivchar Hashem, it says again, you're going to destroy, not have any more enemies, and then it says there'll be the place that Hashem will choose for the beis hamikdash. So have omer, so it's implied from that pasuk, lahachris zaro shel Amalek tchila, that first you destroy the descendants of Amalek. And the Gemara continues, V'chein b'David hu omer, and that's what it says by David HaMelech. It says, Vahi ki yoshav HaMelech David b'veiso, v'Hashem hiniach lo misaviv. It says that the David HaMelech was sitting in his palace, in his house, and there were no more enemies, uchsiv, and it's written, Vayomer HaMelech el Nasan HaNavi, that the king said to Nasan HaNavi, Rein anochi yoshev es harozim v'gomer, mentions the idea of building the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara continues, Amar Reish Lakish says, B'tchila molach Shlomo al Halyonim. Originally, Shlomo was king over the upper worlds. Shenemar, as it says, Vayeshev Shlomo al Kisei Hashem. It says that he sat on the Kisei Hashem, that's the Elyonim. Ulvasof molach al Tachtonim, but at the end, he was king over the lower worlds. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, and this is a Pasuk in Sefer Malachim, Ki hu rode b'chol Ever Hanar mitifsach, v'yad Azah, he ruled over the whole area of Ever Hanar, from Tifsach until Azah. And the Gemara continues, Rav Shmuel, there's a machlokus between Rav and Shmuel with regards to this pasuk. Chad Amar, one says, Tifsach b'sofa olam, v'yaz b'sofa olam. Tifsach is at one end of the world, Az is at the other end of the world, and he ruled from one area to the other. The Chad Amar, the other one says, Tifsach v'yaza, b'hadei hadadi havayas, for the Tifsach and Azah, they actually were very close to one another. V'chashem shemalach al Tifsach v'yal, just like he was king over Tifsach and Azah, which were close, a person can rule over those areas. But in the same fashion he was king, al kol olam kulo, over the entire world. But at the end, he was only king over Yisrael, over Klal Yisrael. Shenemar, as it says, Ani koheles hayisi melech al Yisrael, I koheles, I was king over Klal Yisrael. But then at the end, further on, lo malach el al Yerushalayim, he was only king over Yerushalayim. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Divrei koheles ben David melech Yerushalayim, it says he was the king in Yerushalayim. And at the end, lo malach el al mitas, he was only king over his mita, over his bed. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, he named mitasa shel Shlomo. It mentions the mita of Shlomo. And then at the end, he was only king over his staff. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Zehaya chelki mikol amoli. And this is my portion from all of my labor. Rav Shmuel, it's a machlokus, Rav and Shmuel, what exactly that pasuk refers to. Chad Amar Makla, one says it refers to his staff. The Chad Amar Gundo, and the other one says that it refers to his cloak. And the Gemara asks, Hadar o lo Hadar, did he return or did he not return to be king over the entire world? That's also machlokus Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel disagree. Chad Amar Hadar, one says he did return. V'chad Amar lo Hadar, and the other one says he did not return. Man Amar lo Hadar, the one who says he did not return, Melech v'hedyot, he was a king, but then he was a regular person. Uman Damar Hadar, but the one who says that he did return to being king, Melech v'hedyot v'melech, he was a king, then a regular person, and then he became king again. And Rashi explains, B'tchila, originally, Kodem Shanasa Shlomo Nashim Nachrios, before Shlomo HaMelech married non-Jewish women, Molach Af al Elyonim, he was even king over the upper worlds, Ukashem Shemolach al Tifsach v'Azakach Molach al Kol Olam Kulo, just like he was king over Tifsach and Azah, so to the whole world. V'hachi Kamar Kra, the pasuk would mean to say as follows, Ki urod b'chol Ever Hanor, Kimi Tifsach v'Yad Azah, he ruled over that entire area, just like one is able to rule over that small area of Tifsach until Azah. Al Makla, but then eventually he only ruled over his own staff, Sheishlicho Ashmedai Mikiso, because Ashmedai, he deposed him from his throne. Kedaminu b'Meseches Gittin, the story is mentioned in Meseches Gittin. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Poretz Lasos Lo Derech, a king can break down fences, break down walls in order to make a path for himself. Tanu Rabban and the rabbis taught, Otzros Malachim LaMelech. When a king goes to war, the treasuries of the king that he conquers, that goes to the king. Usharbis and the rest of the spoils of war, Shabozes in which the people take, Mechsa LaMelech, half of that goes to the king, Umechsa LaAm, and the other half goes to the people. Amar le Abai l'Ravdimi, Abai said to Ravdimi, V'amri lo l'Ravacha, some say Abai said to Ravacha, B'shlama Otzros Malachim LaMelech, I understand the treasuries of the kings, that belongs to the king, Orcha Demilsa, that's normal, that's the normal way of war. Elashar Biza Shabozin, but the rest of the spoils that are plundered, Mechsa l'Melech u'Mechsa l'Am Minolan, from where do we know that half goes to the king and half goes to the people? Dechsib, because it's written in the Pasuk, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph.